Hello and welcome once again to the Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative podcast. Even throughout the summer, I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton and Kawartha Lakes, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. You can tell your friends to download it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it is out there. On today's show, we are talking about GC strategies, of course, the Auditor General's report, might even get into the Liberals' plan to reduce the sales of fossil-fueled vehicles. Talk about this and much, much more. We have Stephanie Kusie, Member of Parliament for Calgary-Mindapore. Thanks for coming on the show. Also, the Treasury Board critic.
That's right. Thank you very much for having me, Jamie. It's always a pleasure to be here on the Blueprint with you and Conservatives across Canada.
Well, sadly, your file is kind of busy because, of course, we have a Auditor General's report, and of course, before the past election, we were digging into GC Strategies, a company owned by a couple of guys in their basement with a P.O. box that seemed to get a lot of money, a lot of contracts from different departments, and of course, they're infamous for the ArriveCan app that cost $54 million, but could really be done for a couple $100,000.
That's right. Yeah, this is a two-person company that we have determined really did no IT work. They received $64 million across 31 different departments. And the Auditor General's report was just scathing. Mm-hmm. You saw in the clip, she said that she's not going to make any more recommendations because all that the Liberals really need to do are follow and enforce the rules. You think that would be an easy thing to do, Jamie, is follow and enforce the rules. But apparently it was just too difficult for the series of ministers that we've had over the past 10 years of this Liberal government to follow and enforce these rules with GC strategies. And we saw all types of different rules being broken. We saw that in a lot of the cases when the contracts were evaluated, those who were completing the work didn't have the necessary skills or qualifications to complete the work, which is ridiculous. If you think about applying for a job, the first thing you do is give your resume to be evaluated. We would never let a tradesperson in Canada do work for which they're not certified. This is a fundamental thing. If you go and see your doctor, go and see your dentist, you want to know that they are able to do what you went to see them to do. Another thing we found was that timesheets were not documented at all or poorly documented. How can we assume anything other than these individuals were stealing from the Canadian people and being dishonest about the amount of work that they did or the rate charge, these types of things? So there were just discrepancies all across the Auditor General's report and what she found. And you heard her, she didn't make any recommendations because she has come to the same conclusions before. It's ridiculous. But the Liberals haven't learned. And as you know, that's why we put forward our motion the other day, which passed, and we can get into that as well.
Absolutely. So what you're trying to tell me is the Trudeau Liberals, which was known for breaking ethics rules and other rules set aside for ministers and parliamentarians, it's kind of like the Carney Liberals are doing the same thing. It's like they're the same group of people, isn't it?
It's exactly
despite
like
being
that.
The new government.
That's right. No, it's not new at all. And you can see that this government is really trying to differentiate themselves, but they are fundamentally doing the same thing. So, for example, they put a 7-year ban on GC strategies. Why not indefinite? Why not for life? That's what our motion included, was a ban for life. They just said, nope, 7 years, that's good enough. As well,
but it impacted the company,
yes,
not necessarily the individuals,
right,
or anyone connected.
Exactly.
So a company could just change their business name or number, and you could get right back into the game.
You are absolutely correct about that. It does not stop them from doing that at all. And then the second thing that this Liberal government hasn't done into this new government is actually two things. One is lay off the contractors, the high price consultants, You know, the previous Treasury Board Minister, Anita Anand, said that she was going to get $7 billion in savings with consultants. And instead, we've seen consultant use go up in this government. So that hasn't changed. And the other thing that Anita Anand promised that she was going to do, which I hope her successor does, is get the money back. Because we haven't seen a single cent back, Jamie, from GC Strategies. And as you know, that's why we presented this motion in the House of Commons last week to put a lifetime ban on GC Strategies and it's all of its entities, its different successors that we could see there, and as well that we asked for them to get the money back within 100 days.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Millions of dollars back. Well, let's cue up cut one. We have the Auditor General
Sounds good.
doing a press conference about her latest report, in which, as you mentioned, little to no recommendations because you just have to follow the rules that were laid out before. Play cut one.
Government contracts awarded to GC Strategies Incorporated, an Ottawa-based information technology staffing company. From April 2015 to March 2024, 31 federal organizations issued 106 contracts to GC Strategies. In this audit, we found that federal organizations frequently disregarded government procurement rules that promote fairness, transparency, and value for Canadians. The findings in this audit echo those of previous audits, where we found deficiencies in how public servants applied federal procurement rules. There are no recommendations in this report because I believe the government does not need more procurement rules. Rather, federal organizations need to make sure that the rules that exist are understood and followed.
Only in government can you award these contracts with little to no recording or accountability measures in place and safety guardrails to protect a company's money, but only in government where you can hand out these contracts and not expect any work to be done.
You're absolutely correct. And to add salt to the wound, Jamie, they found that in an amazing amount of the contracts that they did not check for market value of the work that was completed. That's another significant finding. You know, Canadians across the country are price comparing every time they go to buy tomatoes, grapes, apples, anything. They are comparing prices. This government didn't do the same with millions of dollars. They just simply handed out the contracts, gave the contract to GC Strategies. So that was another major finding. But like you said, we are seeing just a continuation from the last government into this government, a disregard for money, a disregard for value, being untrustworthy when it comes to completing work or to documenting that work. This has to change. But as the Auditor General stated in that clip, these Liberals have not learned their lesson. So let's hope in this new government we see an administration, because Mark Carney said that they would be guided by a new fiscal discipline. He said that in the speech from the throne. He said that in addressing his caucus. So let's hope he puts his money where his mouth is and starts to do that, Jamie.
So we have the government continuing to spend on consultants. Well, last year it was something like $22 billion dollars. Billion dollars in a government that is bigger and more bloated than ever. Somehow we found a way to pay $20 billion in consultancy contracts. Unbelievable. And not only that, they continue to go up. There's actually more money in the budget estimated to spend on consultants. So if you're spending this money on consultants, a ridiculous amount, and we continue to blow by these so-called fiscal guardrails, why are we still having a public service that's bigger than ever?
That's a very good question, and I imagine as well it's incredibly demoralizing to these public servants who take these jobs in an effort to serve Canada and then are told, oh, sorry, your work isn't good enough, or we need to bring in someone from the outside. That must be incredibly frustrating and demoralizing as a public servant. But again, as I said, the Prime Minister said he really wants to start a new tone of fiscal responsibility with this government, and yet he presented main estimates of $500 billion. Like that is crazy. He is continuing the Trudeau legacy of overspending. This was shortly followed thereafter by supplementary estimates in the billions as well. He really needs to turn things around from every single perspective, whether it is from expenditures, value for money, good utilization of money. These are all the things that were reflected in the Auditor General's report. And the other insulting thing, Jamie, with all of this is that these ministers who oversaw these atrocities have been promoted in the Carney government. So again, if Carney was truly following a new fiscal discipline, a new level of a new standard with this government, then wouldn't he have ministers who enforce these standards that would include good expenditure of public funds? Canadians, when they give their money to the government, it is with the trust that the government will be good stewards of the money that they have worked so hard to earn. And in the main estimates, Carney is failing to do this. Even, Jamie, we had the new president of the Treasury Board, Mr. Ali, present in the Committee of the Whole last week, and his knowledge base was it was embarrassing for him. He couldn't say the amount of the main estimates. He couldn't say the amount that we were voting on within the House on the main estimates. I mean, these are simple questions that a prime minister who wants to inspire confidence in the Canadian people, they would be able to have this base type of knowledge and have a base level of competence. And yet it seemed within this Committee of the Whole, he was not capable of demonstrating this type of basic information that a president of the Treasury Board who's been on the job now for close to a month would have. So Prime Minister Carney has a lot of work to do in showing Canadians that he is a good steward of their money, and as well that he has appointed ministers who are capable of managing the money of Canadians, spending it well, spending it prudently, staying within the rules even. He's got a long way to go with that and his cabinet to demonstrate that, Jamie.
Well, and the Minister for Treasury Board's been elected since, 2015 or something
That's
like that.
right.
So it's not his first go-around.
Yeah.
And for those listening and watching at home, the estimate process is really the mechanism to get the money flowing.
Exactly.
The budget's more the blueprint. It's the estimates that release the funds. And that's, I think, key in where you see some of these numbers changing and actually increasing. And I hate to say it, based on the numbers that I've seen, the way Mark Carney wants to spend, he almost makes Justin Trudeau look like a fiscal hawk.
Right.
It pains me to say that because
Right.
Trudeau was so awful.
Yeah.
But Carney's plans to grow the economy aren't going to happen. He can say it all he wants. He's got pieces of legislation, historic pieces that the Liberals have put in over the last 10 years, and barriers to competition and attracting capital and all that. So he can say they want to attract business and grow the economy, but when you have to beg government for these permissions and the ability to do certain projects through their new approval process that they hope to bring in, you only get projects that government approve of that have a political ends to it. You don't actually get the best innovation possible.
That's right. And I really think that's what Bill C5 is going to have to overcome is actually getting things done, building things. I mean, we talk about, or I should say the Minister of Natural Resources talks about a 2-year window for approvals, but 2 years is a long time even before you get shovels in the ground compared to Pierre Poilievre's green light policy that he put forward during the election. And we continue to put forward the 4 things that would absolutely provide for way faster productivity. Almost immediately eliminating C48, eliminating C69, getting rid of the caps, and eliminating the industrial carbon tax. Mark Carney said during the election, people don't use a lot of steel. That's absolutely ridiculous. But I mean, this is the type of thinking, and this is the type of, it almost feels like being stubborn to me, that he's not willing to just change these things out of pride, because these were conservative ideas, although they certainly took a lot during the election. But that certainly leads also right into our opposition day motion that we have here at the end of the session on electric vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah. And really being realistic about their creation, their utility, especially given the unique climate, conditions and work environments that we have here in Canada. But it is a realistic assessment that will be needed for productivity as well, because that's definitely the other side of fiscal responsibility. You can manage the money well, but then you have to ensure that the population has access to good markets, good jobs to create that wealth that is required to spend by government.
That leads me into the next topic.
Yes.
We have a few graphics there. We can put them in now or later. So the government of Canada is moving forward with their idea to cap the number of fossil fuel powered vehicles or gas powered vehicles, however you want to say it, in Canada by 2030 or 2035, something like that, which causes a problem on its own. Other than the market choosing what is the best option, they're pretty much taking that off the table. But they're going to cause a situation where you can see this coming down the road as the deadline for this EV mandate comes. You will have probably a surge of sales for gas-powered vehicles, and then the resale market on the other side causes a bit of problem. So I think unless the market dictates terms that, best product, price, service, etc., you're really setting this up to fail, but you're also phasing out a lot of people out of the marketplace that can afford a certain vehicle, right? Like you're spiking the cost of a traditional gas-powered vehicle, and then you're spiking it on the resale or the parts end as well, because you'll be limiting the amount of supply.
Right. Yeah, I see this situation just rife with problems for the Liberal government. In addition to that, I worry about the markets in both the U.S., the production in both the U.S. and Mexico, the type of impact that's going to have on the Canadian market. I'm sure our workers are very worried about those impacts. And then the other thing I worry about, in addition to the consumer choice, the effectiveness of these vehicles in the Canadian climate, is the critical minerals, like the supply chain. Again, and that ties back to the productivity and this 2-year approval window, when once again the Trudeau government was so opposed to any type of resource development for our nation. I almost see it like a chicken and egg kind of problem when you think of it in that way. So I really think that this government has to seriously consider productivity from both an ideological perspective and also a practical perspective, because Canadians elected them with the understanding that they were a mature, professional government comparative to what we've seen in the last 10 years. And so far we've seen, based upon the expenditure, based upon the same players, based upon the outcomes that we've seen to this point, that they are not. And so it looks like C5 is going to pass here in the next 48 hours as we finish up our time here on the Hill. And so the clock starts ticking for this Liberal government and for Mark Carney, that they will deliver what they promise Canadians. And there is nothing worse than someone, especially a politician, especially a prime minister, who can't keep their promises, who say elbows up, but then production is down, national revenue is down. They'd better deliver, and this EV piece is a critical part of it.
I have nothing against EVs. I drive a hybrid myself, but it was the free choice of the free market that made the best option for me possible. And I think that's what we're pushing for. We're not pushing for the government to shove things down people's throat and say, you're going to drive this, because the government doesn't have a crystal ball. They don't know what the options are for people, and they can't tell people what their best option are, because everybody's situation is different. And you know what? I have nothing against public transit. Use it from time to time myself. You're in Calgary. You have a great transit system, right? But at the same time, having a vehicle is basically ultimate freedom. You can go where you want, when you want, with whom you want. It doesn't matter, right? When you're pushed out of the vehicle market because of government mandates pushing a certain narrative, forcing you, maybe you're on the lower end, and that means your gas-powered vehicle is no more, you're taking the bus now. Then you're going on the government's time, on the government's route. There's that other just ideological view of it too, right? Like if public transit's good for you, take public transit. If electric vehicle is good for you, take electric vehicle. If fossil fuel is good for you, buy that, right? Like you should have a range of options, not limited by government's view of the world.
Right, and I think that goes back to Pierre Poilievre's discussion and promise of the Canadian dream during the election. Once again, he talked about owning a home in a safe neighborhood, having a good job. But I think many Canadians would agree historically that also means having a motor vehicle. Some Canadians do not. My sister lives in downtown Toronto. They have a vehicle, but very frequently they travel she loves riding her bike into work. She likes walking. But historically, we do tie having a vehicle into part of the Canadian dream. And I think that definitely applies to the majority of my constituents in Calgary, Mindapore, where we are very much a suburban community and need a vehicle to go to hockey, take the kids to hockey practice, need a vehicle to go to work downtown. So, yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Well, I'm glad you do, because we're pretty much out of time. We have to get out of here, but I always appreciate you giving up your time and your views and love having this conversation. As you know, you're a good friend of the show, but the guests get the last word. The floor is yours.
Well, Jamie, thank you so much for continuing to do the blueprint. I think that it is just excellent content and conversations for not only conservatives, but Canadians across the country that are looking to have insight as to our perspectives and our views. And I'm just grateful to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie Kusie, Member of Parliament for Calgary, Mindapore, also the critic for the Treasury Board. You heard her, folks. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. It's a great conversation. We want to ensure more people get to hear it. So tell your friends to download it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it is out there. New content for you every single Tuesday, even throughout the summer, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next week, remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.